What are you doing back there? Hey, this is Brian with The Balanced Dog, and today I wanted to talk about, kind of in my opinion, what the most challenging dogs are that I get in. And I don't mean to be labeling that like, I've seen that in posts before. People say it's human aggressive, dog aggressive, but I kind of look at it from a perspective of kind of the root cause, and how I come to that conclusion is based on that dog's drives and that dog's level of those drives. And so what I mean by that is that the dogs that I have found the most challenging, and they could be dogs that are dog reactive or reactive to people, but the common thread that I've noticed is that these dogs are typically really high in prey drive and really low in defense, meaning that they're really insecure, but their prey drive is really high. Now, the factor there that I have to point out is what's the pack drive, because that's going to determine just how challenging that dog's going to be. So if the dog's got a low pack drive, it's going to be more challenging because your relevancy really has to be earned through the course of training, right? And there's a lot of ways to do that, but that's something I'm not going to get into at this time. But if the pack drive is higher, that dog's going to eventually start looking to you more, and that's going to happen more quickly versus a dog that's low in pack drive, right? So an example here is Tioga. He's one of my newer dogs, and this is Edie. Edie's very confident, high defense, so completely different dog. Tioga here is a low defense, a lot of flight when he came in, but as his confidence built, I noticed, because initially in the beginning, he would just, on the pack walks and stuff, when he was still on a long line, he would just be right on me, like clinging to me. And then through the help of Hazel, he and Hazel are like best buddies. He started to take that initiative and move out further from me, because Hazel was the one that was drawing him out further. And the more he got out there, the more his confidence started to build. And then I noticed his prey drive started to get, really high. And so now that's what I've always said: when you look at a dog from the initial snapshot and you look at their drive levels, those drive levels will shift through the course of training, which is the case with him. So now his prey drive kind of came up to its full capacity, and his pack drive is really good, but he is a low defense dog. So my point is that, like an example, the other day, UPS was at the front of my house, and I was at the back of the property with the dogs off leash. And we got up close to the house, and as we got up to the house, UPS was just leaving, so he was driving away. Now, let me preface this by saying he came from a hoarding situation, and he's a fairly young dog, I would say under 2 at best. But you got to understand that he probably had zero exposure to the outside world or the outside environment where he was. And so when UPS was driving away, his initial kind of response was he was backing away from it, right? So the truck was, kind of moving this direction, and we were here, so he was backing away. And then as the truck started to drive away from us, he kind of perked up, and then he started to chase it, right? And I just had to fix that just by recalling him. And he turned around and wanted to go after it again. I recalled him. So after 2 repetitions, he stopped. But the point I'm trying to make is that these dogs that have really high prey drive, that are really insecure, the goal is to get control of the prey drive, because prey drive involves adrenaline and cortisol. Ironically, so does flight. So these dogs that are insecure are generally probably more flight driven than they are moving forward on something. But my experience is that if we don't get control of the prey drive, what propels them into trouble is the adrenaline and the cortisol that's being used for the prey drive, right? So prey drive is moving forward, moving out. Flight is running away. the same chemical downloads in both, right? But these dogs that are insecure, that have this prey drive, if they're forging out, like Tioga was in prey drive, and then when the truck started to move away from him, initially he was uncertain about it, but as it started to move away, you know, that inertia of that prey drive drove him towards it, you know, so I just fixed that with a recall. The other day he saw a coyote that popped out of the bush that was fairly close, and my other dogs were just kind of like, well, let that be. But because he was already in a pretty strong prey drive because we just started our walk, and he saw that coyote, he kept trying to push out to the bush, but if I had video, you could see his body language. He wasn't confident, but it was the adrenaline that he was driving on that was taking him out into the bush, which can get him in trouble. So when you're dealing with like a dog that's reactive, I would have to gather that he's probably very insecure. And these dogs that I've had in these situations that are extremely reactive tend to have pretty healthy prey drive, but they also tend to be very insecure. So for me, the fix there is getting control of the prey drive, getting that adrenaline and that cortisol under control, and then using something to fulfill that prey drive, whether it's retrieving or sending them out to find a retrieving bumper and bringing it back. So fulfilling it that way, and then encouraging more of, I wouldn't say flight, but moving away from something. So moving away from the dog, that's being done through either, hey, that's my coffee, girl, being done through recall work or let's go work. So it's just something I wanted to point out, and then kind of how I determine, like, basically if you're looking at that drive theory and you're looking at those drive levels, you're actually looking at the root of the problem, you know. And a lot of people don't look at, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but I feel that people don't really look at the emotional component when it comes to the dog and the behaviors that he carries, right? So that takes me back to the most challenging dogs. The emotional component there is an insecurity, you know, or a fear or an uncertainty. And so the way we switch that is not through going right at it through punitive measures. It's about reestablishing this sort of new pathway on how the dog is in those scenarios, you know. And the more you build that new pathway, that new neural pathway, the dog's going to start gravitating towards that decision, making that decision versus the one going out. It takes time, and again, it just depends on the dog's, you know, level of pack drive and the intensity of the prey drive, you know. So next time you get a dog in like that, stop and sit back and think about it. Hey, Tioga, place. And look at those components. Look at the drive and look at the drive levels. Is he a really high prey driven dog, and is he a really insecure dog? To me, the more I started stopping and analyzing these dogs that came in, it seems to be a common thread. And those, to me, tend to be the most challenging dogs because, again, if you don't control that forward movement, that prey drive, the adrenaline and the cortisol that's pushing the dog out, and get it to come back the other way, not necessarily into flight, but just controlling it, you know. And you'll start to see them, the more you do this, you'll start to see them avoid those situations or start to take themselves out of it. And that avoidance isn't created through punitive measures, which is really important to understand. The avoidance is being created through directional, right? Through the recall, through the let's go, you know. So that's another critical aspect to look at, you know, because I think anything that has to be corrected through a lot of force, most likely is going to have to be maintained that way. And I just get the feeling that a lot of clients will eventually give up if they're constantly having to correct their dog with a fair amount of force, you know. But if I can build it through directions, it stands to reason that a client's going to be more apt to continue to give their dog directions versus focusing more on punitive measures. So that's that. That's all I got to say about that. And Mr. Tioga here, Tioga, come here, please, is trying to hone in on the action there. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Oh, Edie's coming to say goodbye. Hello, Edie. She wants the coffee.